this head here and your workpiece. And that tears up the motors on the inside and causes a big repair bill. So those are the two things to avoid. You'll see them become a problem before they actually are a problem and be able to fix it, as long as you're standing there watching the machine. Let's see, house-specific rules. We have a feature here that you will never, ever, ever use. It's called autofocus. This hole that's been punched in the table, this was an autofocus failure, and I'm not sure what happened, but we went through about a year here with no issues whatsoever. Then within the last 2 months, we've had about 8 autofocus failures.
Oh.
And each time this happens, not only do we have this depression in the work table, you can see all the material separated around it, and it's got a lot of flex. Pretty soon, we're not going to be able to use this whole quadrant of the table. Also, it rips off, oh, in fact, it's missing today. Excellent. There's supposed to be a little dangle down thing here that is the autofocus apparatus. It is currently missing because somebody ripped it off again. Furthermore, if you're trying to run the optics head down through the work table, that's going to put a lot of stress on the motors, and there's a fair amount of torque out here with this even fairly small lever arm. So that can make a big problem for getting accurate results on the machine. So, do not use autofocus. It's really easy. There's a checkbox in the driver window on the computer for autofocus. It is unchecked by default. Leave it that way. That's also the closest we're going to come to a quiz in this class, just because we have had so many issues. As we go through the individual hands-on, each of you needs to point out to me where the autofocus checkbox is and tell me that you will never check it. Hooray! And yes, you do need to tell me that accurately or you will fail the class. So let's actually have a look over here. This one's missing too. Let's check laser 3. There we go. So the autofocus apparatus is supposed to be this little cylinder dangling down the back. The way autofocus is supposed to work is when it's active, the work table raises up automatically, compresses the cylinder into the optics head, and there's a little sensor that gets triggered and drops the table back down a specified distance. But here at Tech Shop, people are not necessarily responsible with their power settings. And if you get a bunch of soot built up inside the optics head, that circuit doesn't connect and the table just keeps raising up. Then you get the kind of damage you see over there. So that's why we don't use it here. If you ever get the chance to work in a very small controlled lab environment, sure, use it. It's a great feature. Just don't use it here. Let's see.
How do we focus that?
We will go through that on hands-on.
Excellent.
It's really easy to do manually,
All right.
actually. Yeah. So, other house rules. I'm blanking out on one, but it'll come to me. What am I blanking out on? Software. We have 2 pieces of software configured to speak with the laser. Those are CorelDRAW and Adobe Illustrator. So you can do your design work in whatever piece of software you want, but you'll have to export it to a file format that can be opened in Corel or Illustrator.
What is that format?
A bunch of different stuff. You can use JPEGs, bitmaps, GIFs, all of your standard image formats. Also, a lot of the CAD/CAM formats, EPS, DXF, DWG, those go in pretty cleanly.
Great.
If you're working with something more exotic, give it a try. You may be able to import it directly. You may have to do a couple of steps to convert it. Also, depending on which CAD/CAM program you're coming from, Corel or Illustrator, one of them is probably going to be easier than the other. For example, getting from Autodesk Inventor to Corel, yes, you can do it. It's a pain. You tend to have crazy things happen, like if you export to the wrong year version of DXF, all of your curved splines turn into straight segments. It's a nuisance. So Inventor to Illustrator is a little bit easier, at least in my experience, but you still have to get all the right file formats matched up.
Inventor is from Autodesk?
Yeah. And that's what we've got installed on all the computers out on the hub. Which version of Illustrator is it? CS5. Corel, I don't remember what we're on currently. But you can check it out. We may do upgrades occasionally. They're usually not published, but you can always just look at the software and find out. So since we've only got these 2 pieces of software installed, you may be tempted to bring in your laptop and send directly from there. Don't do it. Technically, these lasers can receive print jobs, including over a wireless connection, but it's a huge amount of driver configuration. It took them something like 4 months to get Illustrator set up because there's some bizarre thing in the combination of printer driver settings and epilogue printer driver settings. They kept adding an extra page margin. And if you bring in your laptop, there is the possibility that the settings you select may screw up our default configuration. So, do your design work wherever, preferably not on these computers since they're tied directly to the laser. Bring it in on a flash drive, or if you use a file share, yes, we have internet access. You can use the file share here as well. All right, last but not least is reservations. These are very, very popular pieces of equipment here at Tech Shop. The only reason the room's empty right now is because all the lasers get booked out for the class just so we fit. But if you want to get work done on a specific time, definitely make the reservation in advance. You can check the reservation calendar online. You still have to call the front desk to actually make the reservation. And the lasers, I think, are currently, you can reserve them for 2 hours up to 3 times a week. That may change. Check in with the front desk. They'll know the latest and greatest. But that is a little different from most tech shop equipment. Most of the stuff here you can reserve for 4 hours for the lasers. It is only 2 hours. Okay, that's it for the preliminaries. Questions?
If we do damage the equipment, how does that work?
If it's, something fairly logical went wrong, just tell the front desk they'll get it fixed. They're not too worried about putting blame on people. They just want to get the equipment up and running. Now, if you do something phenomenally stupid, like set up something that's going to crash and walk away from the machine, all bets are off. But none of you are going to do that. Other questions?
So, San Mateo has 45 watts, and you guys are 60.
Yes.
And San Francisco is 60.
Yes.
All right.
So that's actually a good question. It's Menlo Park. Anybody here likely to work at Menlo Park? You maybe?
I might in San Francisco, or I might in Menlo Park.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
So Menlo Park is the odd fish out for much of their equipment, and the lasers definitely fit that category. Menlo Park has 2 45-watt lasers, which was a 90-watt tube. Yeah. So basically, Menlo Park, you can still use the lasers. You're still going to get checked off in this class, but you'll need to put in different numbers to set your heat settings on any of the lasers at Menlo Park, and you'll need to know if you're working on the 45-watt or on the 60/90-watt.
So is it literally divisible, so we can just set it at 3/4 power?
No, we'll get into that more later too. In fact, math and logical linear scales are almost entirely useless for epilogue in general.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
All right, so let's get into the setup a little bit, machine tour. Menlo Park has a couple of procedural differences as well. They do have a checkout kit at the side counter. So if you go there to use the laser, you will need to grab that kit. You'll need to sign it out. Here, there is no sign-out kit, but you still are going to need to check in for the reservation. Regardless of whether or not you need to check out the kit from the front desk, you want to pop out this table. We'll talk through how to lower the table down. And check for fire hazards underneath. This is called the vector grid, and we'll have a closer look at it later. But if you check out the kit at Menlo Park, it has the vector grid and the focus gauge. That's it. So what we do not want to see under here is a bunch of flammable debris. Today we've got a couple of little bits, that's not too big a deal, but if you see a bunch of paper shards under there, that can catch fire underneath the work table. That is never good. So you want to clean it out. At Menlo Park, you will have to power down the machines, grab the shop vac from under the table, and just give it a quick vacuum. They have the older model, as they said. Here, we can pop open the front panel, flip up these 2 tabs, and we have a removable debris tray. Just slide it out, dump it in the trash can, good to go. That is my favorite part of the newer models, actually. Anybody who's been in the laser room at Menlo Park with those shop vacs going, you know why. It's really loud. All right, so you're checking for flame hazards and also to make sure the center divider is present. This gets removed for the rotary attachment because you need to put the fixture in the bed here. And typically people are pretty good about putting it back, but not always. So if this is missing, check on the shelves underneath here. That's probably where it's going to be. Menlo Park does not have these shelves, so just check around the tables nearby. If you need to enlist the dream coaches to help you find it, go for it. One day all 3 of these were in one checkout kit. No idea why. It's there somewhere. To install this, the set screws go down on these 2 metal platforms, and the table sits on the narrower ridge here. It's very, very important that the center divider be in place because that is the only thing providing support to the center part of the vector grid, which is a lightweight aluminum honeycomb. That means it's very susceptible to damage, both torque damage and compression damage. So if you don't have that center divider in place, these tables can deform very easily. This is also a 2-sided table. There's a thick aluminum band holding it together around one side. That's really interesting. You should never see that. This means somebody had the table installed upside down. You always want that wide band to be facing down because you want as little metal as possible exposed to the laser itself. What happened here is somebody was working very close to the edge. They went through their workpiece into this aluminum band, and that can reflect back and cause damage to the laser. Now, if you've got any unusable pieces, feel free to rotate it around, install it whichever direction you want. That doesn't